Okay, we've got our cases pretty much prepped, got bearings in it. The rest of it is transmission at this point is where we're going next. Probably the least sexiest part of what we're going to do, but still, like I said, you got to check everything on these. First thing we're going to start with is the shift cam, shift dog, whatever you want to call it. And I'll show you how to inspect this. I'll show you how to inspect all the gears, the driven gears, the drive gears, the forks, the rods. I'll even show you a little trick we do to the rods to make them shift a little bit better, but we're going to start with this. Alright, the first thing that I see a lot of problems with is right here. I've seen these actually crack off, and because of the way that this is built, all you'll get in here is a little bit of play, but it'll still work. So you got to check this for the key. Make sure there's no burrs in here, and I'm feeling this. This feels pretty good. Alright, the other thing you got to look for is the key. We're going to inspect this, make sure that it's not worn. I can actually see a really small line in it. I don't know if you can see it. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but obviously that key is going to fit in here. So we want to make sure that we don't have a lot of slop. There's a couple different designs with the pawl on some of these is welded. This one's not. I actually prefer the ones where it's not welded. But anyways, we'll check the pawl out next. We'll make sure that everything in here looks good. Alright, this shift star, pawl, whatever you want to call it. This has been modified. Thank you, Blaster Freak. I learned that from you. And what I'm looking at here is the same thing. I'm making sure there's no wear inside of the keyway. Everything here doesn't have burrs on it. Everything's nice and round, nice radius. No galling. It looks alright. No burrs on the outside. Everything's rolling over this pretty good. I might want to polish this one a little bit more. And I'm just going to do that with my Ford. I'm just going to run it over a little bit and just make it shiny so everything just rolls over. This is the bolt that holds the star on. So really quick, what I'm just looking for, just make sure it's not stripped. You're going to use a little bit of blue Loctite when you... Next thing I'm going to inspect is the bearing. I'm going to check for play. This thing feels really good. Make sure you don't get any binding when it rolls over. And then the slots where the shifting forks slide in, I'm going to go through this whole thing. I'm going to make sure that I don't see any wear on any of this, no galling. This is black, so I mean any wear you're going to see, you're going to kind of see this silver color. All of this is fine. This is all just normal. Blaster transmissions are about as bulletproof as they come. I don't see a lot of problems with these things. But I just want to show you this and point this out. Any motorcycle, a lot of what we're doing here pertains to bikes in general. This part of the driven gear right here, this gear slides in and engages that. Everything's spinning, but what happens is sometimes, violent shifting, you just many shifts, whatever. You'll get a radius right on this edge. Or you'll get a radius on the drive gear. They call these drive gears because they're locked into the shaft. These are driven gears because you can turn on the shaft. But you want to check this part of the drive gears, and you want to check this part of all the driven gears, and make sure you don't have a big chamfer here. What that'll do, if you have that, when this gear engages, it'll have a tendency of popping out on you. So that's very important that you check that. Alright, I checked all of the engagement parameters here, and everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and run this transmission, but not before I check every single gear. I'm making sure when you really start to see some really shiny parts on this, that's an indication this gear is probably going bad or is going to go bad eventually. These all look pretty good, but take the time, go around, look at every single gear, make sure you don't have any pieces missing. I'm going to do this on the whole transmission. I'm not going to bore you and have you watch me do it, but you can do this. Very easy inspection. Another thing I'm looking at is where my shift forks go, here and here. You're going to see where, when you start seeing really shiny spots, I mean really shiny, like they were polished, like one of my exhaust ports. When you see that in a transmission, there's a problem. So you have to, be very careful of that. Another thing I want to point out is if you decide to disassemble this, I don't. I've got a pretty good idea what I'm doing in here, and as far as taking these transmissions apart, I don't do it. I can do most of the inspection without taking any of it apart, but if you do, there's little clips in here. If you make the mistake of taking one of these clips out and replacing it, you are playing Russian roulette, my friend, because these clips are made to go in one time and one time only, and if that clip breaks, you have major problems. These clips cost less than $1. Not even worth it. I stock them here. If you need one, pop me an email and I can shoot one out to you. But that's my number one rule in transmissions. When I take these things out, I never put them back in. This next part of the inspection this is where your sprocket goes. So I'm looking at this, making sure that the grooves for my retaining clip are all in good shape. Next thing I'm looking at is the shaft itself. This is where my seal wears, and if this is grooved at all, it's not going to seal. So looking at this, I can see that everything here is pretty flat, looks like good wear, so I'm going to clear this part of the transmission. This is the shaft that drives your clutch basket. And remember what I was talking about earlier? Really shiny spots you got to look for? Stuff like this. I went ahead and I mic'd this. I mean, it would be super redundant for me to take a micrometer out and you guys watch me measure all of this. That's crazy. This stuff right here makes me start thinking. To me, this is an indication of a worn out bushing inside of my large clutch basket. So I'm going to look at that, but I'll look at that at a different time. The other thing I'm checking, I checked all the gears on this shaft just like I did on the other, but you know, make sure that these drive gears, and again, we call them drive gears because they're hooked into the shaft. They don't rotate, they rotate with the shaft. Make sure all of these slide nice and easy back and forth. You can put a little pressure in both directions. I'm just kind of twisting it a little bit this way, and I'm going to twist it a little this way, and I'm feeling for any burrs, anything that's going to slow this thing down from moving. I don't feel any of that. You can see there's a little bit of play where this gear is actually moving a little bit, and that's fine. Next inspection is the shift forks, the engagement pins, and the actual shafts that they ride on. This is a little bit tricky if you don't have any measuring tools, but the way that I do it is like this. I take the set of the two forks that come together, and what I'll do is I'll just pop a measurement in here. I'm just checking to see if they're bent. And I'll go down a little bit. So I'm checking at the top point and the bottom point. And that's going to be a good indication if they're bent or not. These are not bent. Another way you can tell if you don't have measuring equipment, just kind of a layman's way of doing it, is you can take them, and when you look at these, same thing. We talked about transmissions. They don't like shiny parts. See this line right here where it's a little bit shiny? Another mark here. Another little one here, but I'm not feeling anything. I'm really not worried about this. This is nothing I would call you and say, oh, you need new shift forks. Because you don't. This is going to be fine. Check them on the other side, same thing. We got a little wear here. Nothing bad. Another little mark here. And I'll do the same thing with the other side. Just check both sides of the shift fork. Make sure that you don't have any shiny spots like this. But again, this is normal wear in this bike. This is my bike. I'm going to run it. I'm not going to have any shifting problems. But when you start seeing them gouged in, and I see a lot of them like that, they'll come in and there's a big old gouge in here. At that point, it's time to change the shift fork. eBay, best deal. Just make sure when you're buying these, you know, they got like a little flat finish on them. You get a good set of forks. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start inspecting everything and making sure it's true. I'm going to start with these shafts. I'm going to show you how to check them for run out. I'll show you the easy way, and then I'll show you the way I do it. And then we're going to polish them to make sure everything moves across. One thing I will point out, I've seen some race motors come in here. Some guy in Florida, I don't know who he is, but he takes a grinding stone and he just follows all the way down the shaft and makes a groove in there. I haven't seen any wear from it, but I don't do it in here. Maybe, you know, just something, food for thought, something to think about. But anyway, he makes like a groove in here. My suspicion is that he does it to hold oil. These transmissions work great. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to polish this one. I use these bench centers for a lot of things other than crankshafts, and they really come in handy. what I've done here is I'm taking the shaft from my forks and I got it between my centers. I put a dial indicator on it and I'm going to roll it over. What I'm checking for is to make sure that this thing's not bent. If this is bent, this needle's going to be going crazy. What I'm seeing is a half a thousandths. Does not concern me at all. We're going to go ahead and run this one. Same gig. I put the shorter shaft in and running into bench centers, roll it over. This one's got a little bit more. Looking at about a thousandths. Anything more than that, I would want to change this, but it's my bike. I'm going to run this. This looks alright. Let's check the transmission next. Alright, I loaded up the drive assembly, and this has almost zero. Again, a few tenths, maybe 3/10. And I'm pretty confident with this. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Same thing going on here. This is my clutch drive where my clutch is going to get hooked up, and checking this out. And again, 3/4 of a thousandths, nothing to really concern me. But the important thing here is I checked everything. I got peace of mind knowing that everything is almost perfect. It's relatively straight. I'm not going to go through all the extra steps or spend the extra money to buy shafts, because to be honest with you, when I get them from Yamaha, they're probably not going to be any better than they are right now. And that's it. Basically, that part of the transmission inspection is done. Okay, if you don't have bench centers, and I know a lot of you don't, another method of checking these is put them on something flat. I'm going to use my granite stone. Piece of glass, thick glass, works really good. If you don't have a stone, by the way, I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but if you don't have a stone, these aren't really that expensive. I think you can get them under $300, but you can also get a piece of glass. If you get a piece of like 1/2-inch glass, that's pretty good. And it'll do the same thing, but you can just take these and roll them. You know, if it rolls like that, you're all set. I'm not going to break my own rule and pull this clip off because I don't have another one, but I'm just going to check this the same way, and just, you know, you'll feel it if it's out. But that's the second way you can check these. Okay, what I did here is I took one of the rods that the shift forks ride on, and I mounted it in my mill. I would usually do this in a lathe, but I got job set up in it, so I can't do it. But I just put it in this chuck, and you know, I know you're going to notice a little bit of run out. This is a chuck. Chucks are not known for being extremely accurate as far as holding something in it. But all I'm going to do is polish this thing. I got some wet dry 600 grit sandpaper. I set my Bridgeport up for max speed. Turn it on. And all I'm going to do, put some water on it, is just come down, make this nice and smooth, right back to where it was when it was born. You can do this. I know most of you don't have a Bridgeport, but you can do this with a hand drill. Actually, you can take this, put it in a drill, and do the same thing that I'm doing here. But that's what we do to make your shifting a little bit easier. Okay, here's the other shaft, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Not really removing any material, just making things a little shiny. Make everything so it it slides. Nice flat surface. That's it.